Another LSU Tiger is hitting the transfer portal, and it leaves LSU even thinner at quarterback. We'll explain. Locked on LSU. Here we go.
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We're free, available wherever you get podcasts. Of course, on YouTube as well, so please subscribe as always. One of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. So thank you sincerely for that. And thank you for helping make the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network in the world. Wednesday brought another LSU Tiger announcing his intention to enter the transfer portal. So that's a half dozen now from LSU that we know when the portal window opens on January 2nd, will be putting their names in. And while Ashton Stamps and some of the receivers weren't necessarily surprised, Ahmad Bro, I think, was a surprise considering how much he had contributed. Jawan Johnson entering the transfer portal is disappointing, but also understandable when you consider what his career has been. So follow me here. Jawan Johnson, his path to LSU was so interesting because he prepped at Lafayette Christian. And I know a lot of people probably know this story, but just for the benefit of those that don't, Jawan Johnson prepped at LCA and left his high school career. LCA is Lafayette Christian Academy. At LCA, he set Louisiana records for total yards with 14,451 yards in 4 years and touchdowns with 171 touchdowns. This dude, we said it so often during his time at LSU, he knows what to do. He knows what to do with the ball in his hands. He has a knack for making plays, incredible athlete. You saw that, like, literally as a freshman, the first game when they moved him back to running back, threw him a screen pass and got in the end zone. Like, literally his first game ever playing at the position in college. But he played high school quarterback, signed with LSU as a 4-star defensive back, which is what he was going to play. Early in 2024, of course, Trey Holly was going through his legal situation. Then John Emery tore his ACL, and LSU was paper thin at running back. So they moved Johnson to running back, where he spent the 2024 season. Then you go into the spring before 2025, and they make the decision to move Jawan Johnson to quarterback. And then he spent the entire spring at quarterback, and then in fall camp was at quarterback. As a matter of fact, Joe Sloan talked about that decision, moving Jawan Johnson to quarterback.
Jawan wanted to come back to quarterback. I couldn't be more excited to have him. You know, he's obviously a different style of quarterback than maybe the other two guys. You're going to have to respect his feet. And, you know, just working through him, I think you've seen his growth from a passing standpoint. He throws a good ball, but in terms of his read progressions and doing the things he needs to do, and then, you know, just his footwork and commanding the huddle, I think he has great leadership skills. And obviously he's been electric with the ball in his hand. Made a couple big plays when we've been in live tackle situations. So I think he's been excited. He's been fun to coach. He's attentive, and he's getting after it.
He's such a great athlete, really dynamic, great leader. And one of the things I love the most about Jawan Johnson during his time at LSU is he's a team guy. Think about what I just categorized and chronicled for you from a guy that was Louisiana high school's all-time leader in yardage and touchdowns, comes to LSU because he wants to be a Tiger and plays defensive back, and then switches to running back, then to quarterback, then back to running back. Like, he is a team guy who has been willing to do whatever LSU needed him to do in order to have success. And he saw the field. As a freshman in 2024, played in all 13 games. He had 7 rushes for 14 yards. He had 5 catches for 22 yards, but he was on the field in every game. This year, as a sophomore, played in all 12 games. He's had 38 rushes, averaged 4 yards a carry, couple of rushing touchdowns. He also here in his sophomore year in a variety of different ways. So I guess the point being that Lane Kiffin, as creative as he is, was going to find ways to involve Jawan Johnson in the offense. But Jawan Johnson put on Twitter, in noting that he was entering the portal, he posted videos of his high school quarterback highlights. And the caption read, "Soon," which is effectively indicating that Jawan Johnson wants to go somewhere that he can play quarterback. And given LSU's current state and numbers at quarterback being as paper thin as they are, the fact that he's entering the portal with that in mind, with the opportunity to go play quarterback somewhere, that's indicative, I think, of the conversations that Jawan has had with this staff about if he would have an opportunity to play quarterback, which clearly is just not going to be the case. When you look at the quarterback situation for LSU in 2026, and you know this, but just to reset it, okay? Garrett Nussmeier's out of eligibility, and Jawan Johnson's going in the transfer portal. Colin Hurley is currently taking an indefinite leave from the team. We don't know if Hurley will be back, and Hurley still hasn't taken a meaningful snap at LSU in 2 years. That leaves only Michael Van Buren, who, for all of the hullabaloo about Van Buren when Nussmeier was struggling, if you're an everydayer, you heard me say it, I don't need to go down the rabbit hole again, but I went through all my notes from fall camp about Michael Van Buren and how much he struggled this fall camp with accuracy. And those are things that you can improve upon, but we saw Michael Van Buren lead LSU's offense, after the Texas A&M game, and they went to Tuscaloosa and scored 9 points. And then they played Arkansas, which was the worst defense in the SEC, and scored 23. And then they played Western Kentucky, which was a bad defense in Conference USA, and scored 13. And then they went to Oklahoma, which was a really good defense, but scored 13. The point being, Michael Van Buren is not your answer. At least you can't definitively say right now going into next year, Michael Van Buren is your answer. So you have got to go find answers. And that's really the big thing for Lane Kiffin and his staff is where are those answers going to be in the transfer portal? I have some thoughts, and I want to give you some context as well. So we'll pick up there. I got to knock this out, so stay with me. I get to some of this portal talk with quarterbacks in just a second. It's Locked on LSU, your team every day. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift, when a receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the moment flips and the momentum flips after a turnover. And FanDuel lets you jump into those moments. Live spreads and money lines adjust instantly. Player props update as guys heat up. You can bet next touchdown scorers, drive results, totals, and so much more. It keeps you locked in every snap, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long at FanDuel. The games move fast, and so can you. Today's show is also brought to you by Rougiette Ready. Let's talk about something that men don't often bring up, but absolutely should. Stress from work, money, life, it doesn't just switch off at night. And when it shows up at the worst possible time, Rougiette Ready is designed to help you take back control. Rougiette Ready is next generation prescription treatments created to support both brain and the body, so you can feel present and confident and ready when the moment matters. Look, the science behind Rougiette Ready stands out. There's 3 clinically proven ingredients in one formula designed for both mental and physical readiness. Most men are ready in about 15 minutes on average, so you can stay present, confident, and in control when the moment is right. You've been thinking about taking the next step? Now is the time. Head to Rougiette.com/lockedoncollege. That's RUGIET.com/lockedoncollege to get 15% off your order for a limited time. Rougiette Ready. Feel present, feel confident, feel ready. And we're brought to you by Our Lady of the Lake, championship health partner of LSU athletics. When Baton Rouge calls, champions answer. As Coach Kiffin takes the helm, energy is building and the excitement is in the air, but next season's work starts now. Behind the scenes, every day, on and off the field. As championship health partners, LSU and FMOL Health, Our Lady of the Lake providers, are in the huddle, keeping students and teams healthy, supporting campus life, and preparing everyone for what's ahead. From checkups to training to day-to-day care, the focus is on giving their best when it matters most. Coach Kiffin settles in. Our city welcomes him and his family. One thing is clear: the next play starts now, and Louisiana is ready. FMOL Health, Our Lady of the Lake, and LSU. Championship Health Partners. Learn more at olrmc.com/LSU. It is abundantly clear that Lane Kiffin and his staff are going to have to go into the transfer portal for help at quarterback. As you mentioned, Michael Van Buren is the only scholarship quarterback that you have on the roster presently. Now, Colin Hurley is still on the roster, but he's not with the team. And then Emil Picarella is a walk-on who is a preferred walk-on. He was a 3-star from U-High who decided to forego G5 opportunities to walk on at LSU. And he could certainly develop. We just saw what Lane Kiffin did with Trinidad Chambliss, although they're different types of players. I think there are a couple of very obvious options. Remember, roughly a quarter of every player in college football enters the transfer portal year over year. So there will be experienced veteran quarterbacks that enter the portal in this cycle starting on January the 2nd. There have already been reports about Sam Leavitt, who is the Arizona State quarterback who has effectively declared that he intends to enter the transfer portal. Now, Leavitt, of course, a year ago led Arizona State to the college football playoff and has already announced his intention this year to enter the transfer portal and likely have an opportunity to go get a big payday. Now, this season with the Sun Devils, Leavitt, who started his career, you might remember, at Michigan State in 2023 and then has spent the last 2 seasons at Arizona State, threw for 2,800 yards and 24 touchdowns a year ago. In 2025, he saw a regression in his numbers, 1,600 yards, 10 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. So a step back this year for Sam Leavitt, but a guy with college football playoff experience and big-time potential. It's also worth noting that Trinidad Chambliss, who Charlie Weiss and Lane Kiffin discovered and brought to Ole Miss when he had an offer and looked like he was going to land at Temple, ends up at Ole Miss, has an all-conference caliber season. He was second-team All-SEC. If Chambliss is granted an extra year of eligibility, he could certainly enter the portal and follow his coaches to Baton Rouge. And if Chambliss is granted an extra year of eligibility and stays in Oxford, okay, that could open the door for Austin Simmons to enter the portal, who, of course, started this season as the quarterback at Ole Miss, was actually at SEC Media Days representing Ole Miss this past July. He could enter the portal. And then there's a whole bunch of other names that we just don't know yet that will enter the portal. And a couple of things are abundantly clear. LSU is investing all of the resources they need to be aggressive in the portal to sign the best players they need to. And Lane Kiffin, the self-proclaimed portal king, has an awful lot to sell, not only with his offense and the success they've had, but with what LSU is going to offer with resources and with NIL opportunities. The other bit of good news from LSU's perspective, as you're looking at the portal window, the 12-team college football playoff field was just announced this past weekend. And if you look at the 12 quarterbacks, if I asked you off the top, how many quarterbacks are transfers in their first year at their current school that made the playoff? What would the number be? Shout it out loud. You're in your car, you're walking the dog, whatever you're doing, sitting at your desk, pretending to work. Shout it out. How many of the 12 teams in this college football playoff, how many do you think have first-year transfers that are starting at quarterback? What if I told you it was half the field? Fernando Mendoza, who, by the way, is going to win the Heisman Trophy, transferred from Cal. He's in his first year at Indiana. Carson Beck at Miami, transferred from Georgia in his first year at Miami. Dante Moore, transferred from UCLA, first year at Oregon. Now, of course, is leading Oregon into the college football playoff. We just mentioned Trinidad Chambliss from Ferris State, quarterbacking Ole Miss into the college football playoff. Tulane, Jake Retzlaff was at BYU, transferred into Tulane in his first year, has the wave in the college football playoff. And then John Mateer at Oklahoma, transferred from Washington State to OU, first year with the Sooners in the college football playoff. Half of the college football playoff field is being quarterbacked by first-year transfers. And then there's also Julian Sayin, who's in his second year at Ohio State, but his first year as a starter and is also a transfer. So 7 of the starting quarterbacks in this year's college football playoff are transfers. 6 of them are in their first year. So anyone who kind of floats out the idea that maybe, just maybe, maybe you're that Lane Kiffin would need a grace period, a ramp-up period. I don't see that at all. I think Lane Kiffin is coming into a spot where in this era, in the portal era, in the NIL era, with all that he has available to him and at his disposal, he's not inheriting a rebuild. He's inheriting a situation where he can walk in and win immediately. And I'll remind you again, in the history of college football, the losingest program among the power schools is Indiana. Worst program in the history of college football. Kurt Signetti shows up, and in year one, has them 11-1 in the college football playoff. Year two, brings in Fernando Mendoza, who's going to win the Heisman, and has him back, ranked number one in the country, undefeated, Big Ten champs, and the college football playoff. So there is a realistic expectation for Lane Kiffin in year one to find a quarterback, to get this right with Blake Baker and the defensive staff in place to end up competing for and in the college football playoff. Now, of course, it's not easy in the SEC. It'll be a 9-game schedule. Next year will be different. Will they expand the playoff? We'll see. But yes, that is going to be the expectation, is to figure out quarterback and get this team in the college football playoff in 2026. Now, Jawan Johnson won't be a part of it. We'll see who ultimately will be. Before we dismount here, a couple of other quick notes as we look at LSU staff. Our previous episode, shout out to the everydayers who watched or listened. Elijah Robinson, certainly not looking great at this moment for LSU as Nebraska and Penn State are pushing. Two other quick notes. Joe Houston was on LSU's campus on Wednesday. He was Florida's special teams coach. He's an analyst, but was Florida's special teams coach. He's a Joe Judge guy, time at Iowa State, Alabama, 4 years with the New England Patriots as well. Joe Houston was on campus at LSU on Wednesday. No word as of this very moment if he's agreed to a contract, but that's one name to keep an eye on for special teams. And then also Lance Guidry, who former Miami defensive coordinator, former head coach at McNeese. Lance Guidry is headed to Oregon State as their defensive coordinator. He was a defensive analyst for he was a defensive analyst in 2025 at LSU under Brian Kelly, but he's got a DC job now at Oregon State as he heads up to Corvallis. So some more staff changes as well as this thing evolves. We'll certainly keep you up to date on all of it. So make sure you're locked in with us here every single day. Hey, thanks for making the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network in the world. If you're listening on podcast, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app, rate us, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video, and let a friend know if they love the Tigers. We got you here every single day for Locked On LSU, your team every day.